thank you for taking the time to watch my video today. That handsome devil in the opening clip is my shop dog Monty. Today we're taking a look at how I make these steel pickguards for electric guitars. The first thing that I do is to ensure that the product will fit properly. I trace a template onto my workpiece. In this case, that workpiece is 16 gauge sheet metal that I had already cleaned up ahead of time before filming. I use a plasma cutter to cut the steel into the shape that I had traced on with the template and marker. And once I've done this, I grind off any residual torch slag with a 60 grit grinding disc. I correct some errors that I'd made on my initial cuts, and I trim down as close as possible to the traced lines to save myself time later. From here, I clamp it onto my welding table and I begin to refine the shape with my autofile. The autofile is by far one of my favorite tools because it will reach places a regular grinder won't fit. It's especially nice for tight spaces such as pickup cavities and neck pockets. Usually by this point, the lines that I'd traced earlier with the marker have cooked off from the heat, so it's a good idea to re-reference the template and notate any adjustments that need to be made. After a little more work with the autofile, it's now on to hand files. I use round files to soften the corners, and then I true up the straight lines and edges with flat files. And although I have a lot of pneumatic tools in my shop, I find it essential that I do this with hand files because with power tools it can be very easy to take off too much material and leave yourself with a poor fit. I've been guilty of this on numerous occasions. Now that I'm happy with the overall shape, I use a spring-loaded punch to locate the holes that will be used to install the pickguard later, and I polish the surface with a Scotch-Brite disc on my grinder. From here, I alternate between the autofile and die grinder with Scotch-Brite abrasives to establish the bevel on the outer edges. Moving forward to the drill press, I use oil to keep my drill bits cool and prevent premature wear and tear. The bit attached to the drill press self-locates effortlessly into the divot left by the punch from earlier. Now I clean off all the burrs from the backside with my die grinder, and I move up a bit in size to allow the screws to be recessed into the pickguard. Now that all of my metalwork is done, I use numbered punches to stamp the pickguard with a production number and clean the surface thoroughly with a lacquer thinner to ensure there are no contaminants. I then apply my bluing solution with a sponge applicator, and after letting it set, I rinse it off with cold water. As you can see, we've got a nice relic finish, and it's time to install it onto the guitar. Ideally, you would do this with no strings on the instrument so that it's easier to mount that neck pickup, but I had recently just restrung this guitar, and I decided it wasn't worth the hassle, and I just left them on. Now that it's all screwed in place, it's time to plug it in and see if looking better makes me play any better. Well, I hope you enjoyed watching how I made this pickguard. If you're interested in having one for yourself, I just opened up a store over at Reverb. I'll put a link to that in the description below. This particular one is for the Pete Townshend model Schecter or the Schecter PT. If you have a different guitar that you'd like one of these for, send me a message. We'll get it worked out. I'd be happy to build it for you. If you made it this far, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.